45,979 people died from suicide in the United States in 2020, according to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. A whopping 1.2 million people attempted to. This many deaths has only increased, making suicide the 12th leading cause of death in the United States. Some of my friends have actually committed suicide, and the impact and lasting effect that has on the people around them is tremendous. It really affects them to their souls, and honestly, it's one of the worst things that can happen to a person and everyone around them. I've come here to explain that we need to enact changes in our lives that will help to end the mental health issues and prevent suicide from happening. In this speech, I will begin by explaining the reason for the mental health crisis in the United States. Then, I will explain the main way people commit suicide, and finally, I will tell you what you can do to help. I will first begin by explaining the elements that have created the mental health epidemic that we are currently facing. The COVID-19 pandemic has created a mental health crisis. I think that's an easy thing for everyone to understand. The rates of depression and anxiety have skyrocketed according to a 2021 Mental Health America report. In this report, they discussed them doing mental health screeners, and they found that 8 in 10 people who took either a depression or an anxiety screening showed that they had severe signs of either moderate to severe symptoms. Rates this high haven't been seen since World War II. And with rates this high, it's no surprise that suicide is so high. Another cause is that men are more likely to commit suicide for a couple reasons. And firstly is that men are more likely to use the most lethal method possible, guns. According to a BBC article from 2019, women, although they are 1.2 times more likely to attempt suicide than men, being more violent and having a higher percentage of gun ownership in the United States, are far more likely to shoot themselves before anyone can intervene. Secondly, men actually have a higher desire to kill themselves, according to that same BBC article. It said that a study of suicide patients in hospitals found that men on average had much higher levels of suicide intent than the women that were also there. And finally, and most importantly, men don't seek help because of the world we've created. Men are taught from a young age to be strong and not to admit when they need help. And this fosters an environment where when men don't feel comfortable getting help for the issues they face. By changing the environment, hopefully we can help to eliminate suicide. I've talked to you about why suicides happen. I'd now like to discuss the how. Firearms are actually responsible for the most suicides by far, at 53% of suicides, according to the SPRC in 2022. This is the largest cause among suicides by far, and a statistic presented by AmericaHealthRankings.org in 2019 said that the U.S. has a suicide rate of 1.45 per 100,000 people, and that the state of Wyoming alone has a rate of 29.8. And there's a definite correlation you can see here between the suicide rate and the amount of gun ownership, because in Wyoming is actually the state with the highest per capita gun ownership. So it just goes to show that having access to guns increases your likelihood for you to attempt suicide, and definitely increases the successful suicide attempts. So simply by hopefully eliminating access to guns, suicides can be drastically reduced. And that leads me to what can be done actually. Well, first of all, guns can be kept in safes as a way to reduce suicides. According to the Washington Post in March 2018, in Massachusetts, where they have the strictest safe storage laws in the country, guns are used in just 9% of youth suicides, compared to 42% nationally. The suicide death rate, on top of that, is actually 38% below the national average. And considering suicide is responsible for the largest cause of gun deaths, this action would go a long ways towards making the world a safer place for everyone. By simply keeping your firearms in a safe, or by encouraging people you know to lock their firearms in a safe, you can help to eliminate the most prominent suicide cause. Now, I understand that that's not applicable for most people, because I know for me, I don't really know people who actually have guns available in that same way. So there is another way that I have found that actually can also help to prevent that suicide from happening. By fostering an environment where people are willing to accept help, you can actually help to reduce suicide significantly. According to the National Alliance on Mental Health, by simply showing your support for their issues in the way that's non-stigmatizing, so by encouraging them to get help, by addressing that they have these issues, but showing that you still love them or that you still care about them in that way, and by explaining the issues they have in a non-condescending way, and finally by offering help in a meaningful way. So by actually going out and finding a therapist they could go to or a mental health resource that they can use, rather than just telling them to go and get that help, they're far more likely to get that help, and that help goes a long way to reducing suicide rates. And depression is a curable disease. You just have to get the help that you need. And so by encouraging people to get that help, and by fostering an environment where people are more willing to accept help, you can actually very, very successfully end suicide as a thing that happens to people near you who experience depression or anxiety. So, in conclusion, we need to do what we can to help end the mental health crisis and prevent unnecessary premature deaths as a result of suicide. I told you about why there's a mental health and suicide crisis. I went into what is most responsible for those deaths, and finally I explained meaningful things you can do to actually cause change. I encourage you to try implementing these strategies in your life. If we can create a world that's free of mental health stigma and eliminate one of the most accessible causes of suicide, we can help end the mental health epidemic and really push towards finding more mental health in our world. Thank you for your time and attention, and I encourage you all, do not be afraid to get help. If you get help, you can go a long way to becoming a more well-rounded person that is free of issues that are actually preventable. Thank you.